Welcome to the ultimate Ecuador travel guide. We have just spent 6 weeks exploring all the most popular parts of Ecuador.
We did famous treks, hung out with hummingbirds and butterflies in a cloud forest, and explored deep into the Amazon rainforest.
This Ecuador travel guide will have countrywide tips as well as a breakdown of our full itinerary. That is where we went, how much we spent on accommodation, things we like to eat, everything.
Just like our Colombia travel guide, we've also put together a Google Maps that you can download. It has all of the locations for the things you will need. Bus terminals, the hotels that we stayed at, where we found our favorite food and what to order at that restaurant. It's really cool because you download it and you can use it offline. So as you're wandering the streets in Ecuador, you can click onto the map, see what we suggest, how much it's gonna cost, click any links to book or watch our videos. It's just such a helpful resource when you're traveling a country like this.
Okay, let's get started by going through some tips.
Money. Surprisingly enough, Ecuador actually uses the US dollar, which I had no idea about until we entered the country.
It is pretty interesting why they use the US currency, and I did talk about it a little bit in one of our videos. You can click here to watch that one. Maybe, or here, I don't know. Because it is US based, you'll notice a general increase in cost versus Colombia. Things do tend to cost a little bit more.
Luckily, using card is a lot more common in Ecuador than it was in Colombia, but cash is still very much king.
Obviously, all of the street vendors use exclusively cash, so try not to be caught without some bills.
And if you withdraw from the ATM and have the large bills, try and go to a supermarket or somewhere you know that they'll have enough change just to get it broken down into the smaller things, because street vendors often won't have change and then you'll have to pay more or not get what you want.
Surprisingly, ATM withdrawal fees in Ecuador weren't as bad as we thought they were going to be. We found consistent ATMs that were charging $1.50 to withdraw, which is better than Colombia and a lot better than Peru. Spoiler alert. If you have a few to choose from in the same area, look for the ATM that's pink. I can't remember the name, but the pink one has the cheaper fees.
Safety.
The safety levels in Ecuador are similar to most places we've been.
I always struggle talking about safety in relation to a country because I think it's a different thing if you live there full time versus if you're visiting and what sort of travel you're doing as well. But we had no issues across the board throughout Ecuador. We heard some horror stories, but I just think the general rules that you would use when you're even at home in your own country: don't go out too late at night by yourself. Don't walk down dark alleyways. If there's some dodgy looking people, walk towards some friendly looking people. Like, just be smart and you should be okay.
I will say as well, the Ecuadorian people were very friendly from the get-go. Really smiling, happy bunch.
Everyone's saying like buenos dias to you in the morning. It's really sweet.
The only place that we did hear horror stories both from locals and tourists was bus travel. Bus travel is something you do have to be very, very cautious of because it tends to be a bit of a risk if you have your bag under your seat or over above your head. We personally heard 2 separate people have issues and have things stolen from them. We even met a woman through our travels who was told by the bus conductor to put her bag up over her head and then was robbed. She tried to say, no, I want to keep it with me, and he insisted that she had to put it up there and was robbed. So you just really got to have your wits about you. Every time we were told to put our bag above our head, we just said no and pretended we didn't speak the language.
What's crazy is after we met that woman in Banos, one of the next buses we got, that happened to me. This person hopped on the bus and he was dressed, he was acting as if he worked there, and he said, put your bag up above. And I said, no. He said, no, you have to for the bus to be safe. And I said, no. And eventually he just kept trying. I kept saying no and he gave up. But who knows what would have happened if I was just like, oh, okay, an official looking person, put it up there.
Just say no.
SIM cards.
It's a no-brainer again. You need to get a SIM card if you're going to be in Ecuador. It's not that expensive and it comes in handy countless times.
We got 25 gigabyte each, which set us back about 30 Australian dollars, and it was super simple to set up. We literally went into a shop in Quito. He did it all for us. He was super friendly. We walked out and we were connected. We did hear some people had to get like a 3-day pass to then recharge it to have data, but we didn't have that experience. We got 30 days straight away.
Yeah, so if you shop around, you'll find something that's pretty easy. We use Claro, and if you do run out of data, or if you go over those 30 days, it is really easy to recharge. You just look for someone on the street that's got a Claro sign, walk up to them, say recharge, and they'll give you an option on their phone of different amounts that you can recharge in different packages. Click it, pay them cash, put your number in, and it recharges instantly. It's really easy.
It's so bizarre, but so convenient.
Yeah.
If you can't find anyone on the street to recharge, there is a website that we use because the Claro website is a bit confusing for non-Spanish speakers. This third-party one works really well and is very simple to use.
We'll link it.
Yeah, in the description. Oh, it's also, I think it's in the maps, like where we bought the SIM card and the link to recharge.
Right, just get the maps.
Travel between cities.
Again, the bus system is the cheapest way to get around Ecuador. I think that's going to be a pretty common thing as we travel through South America. Buses go long distance pretty comfortably here.
Caveat, we are saying this as two people that have big, heavy, rolly bags. I think if you were traveling with a light single backpack, flying might be the same price or cheaper. It's when you add bags on, that's when it becomes a lot cheaper to go by bus.
Adding bags to a flight is doubles the price straight away. So if you don't have bags or you have a small carry-on, look at flights.
Yeah.
The buses in Ecuador are pretty easy and pretty comfortable. Whenever you need to get anywhere, you can just show up to the bus station and start asking questions. Specifically, the bigger bus stations will have a lot more of a comprehensive network. We found that half the time there wasn't information online unless you can find a blog post. Showing up to the bus station and asking, or when you arrive into a city, asking about your departure is going to be the best bet.
The good thing is at the bus station, all of the vendors or the people that work for the different bus companies are really helpful. So they might not be selling tickets to where you want to go, but they'll tell you exactly where to go and who to speak to buy the ticket. And if you go to that one and it's maybe a bit later than you would like, they're not going to be like, well, no, you have to get my ticket. They'll be like, oh, those guys down the road, they leave 20 minutes before us.
They're really good.
Yeah. Drinking water.
The tap water in Ecuador as a blanket rule is not to be drunk. Don't drink the tap water. We've seen things that some parts of Cuenca and some parts of Quito, the water is okay to drink, but every time we asked our host, they even said, maybe not. Or, yeah, you can, just boil it first, which, you know, it's a bit of a red flag. So we were just going to get bottled water pretty much every day.
It's pretty cheap and you just want to be safe. You don't want to get sick while you're traveling or on holiday, so it's not worth the risk. Speaking Spanish and Google Translate.
Knowing some Spanish is always going to be beneficial when you're in a country that speaks Spanish.
I don't know what that means.
There is not much English in Ecuador. Even moving through capital cities, there's few and far between English speakers.
Don't let speaking Spanish hold you back from visiting though. We sometimes get comments that I find so intriguing from people being like, if you don't speak the local language, why are you traveling there? I'm traveling there to experience a culture I haven't, that's why I'm traveling there. It baffles me so much. Definitely don't let that hold you back. Just download Google Translate. It works offline.
Yeah, you get by pretty easily with it. And just being surrounded by people speaking Spanish, you pick up a lot. Like, we can pretty comfortably navigate bus terminals and taxis and the really basic stuff. Don't have much of a problem anymore.
Generally speaking, you'll pick up enough that you can get by. You're not going to be able to have conversations that would be great to have with the local people, but you'll be able to travel around and have a good time. Ubers and taxis.
Speaking of traveling around, the Ubers are very available in Quito. In all the capital cities in Ecuador, you will not have any trouble getting an Uber. Even in some of the smaller cities as well, there's a few Ubers around.
The reason we like Uber so much is because we don't speak Spanish and we don't know the area very well. It's so much easier to just be able to type in the address of your hotel or the restaurant you want to go to, and you know that's where the driver's taking you. There's not potential for a miscommunication. Taxis are obviously abundant, but they do come with a risk. If they're metered, we normally have no problem trying to take a taxi. If they aren't metered, we start to get worried that maybe we're getting taken for a ride.
The only place we got in a taxi that was metered without us asking was Cuenca.
Interestingly enough, Cuenca, which is the expat capital of Ecuador, doesn't have Uber. It only ends up being $2, so it was okay.
The alternative to Uber, and what I do suggest getting, is Didi. If you're doing longer rides through Quito, because it's a massive city, Didi was coming up at about half the price and was like instantly finding, whereas Uber was like loading for 5 minutes and then the driver would cancel and then I'd find another driver. Didi really worked out. The only caveat to that is you have to use cash. So again, have cash.
Time of year to travel.
The best time to visit Ecuador depends on your preferences and what part of Ecuador you're wanting to visit. Generally, the best time to visit is the high season.
Insurance, visas, entry requirements, and yellow fever.
As an Australian or an American, you can stay in Ecuador up to 90 days without a visa. You are supposed to show onward travel. We didn't have it at the time we crossed the border and we weren't asked, but it's good to have it. The only other thing to consider when going to Ecuador is looking into the yellow fever vaccine. It does say on some immigration websites that you need to present proof that you've had the yellow fever vaccine to even enter the country. Again, we weren't asked. We managed to get into the country and get a free yellow fever vaccine from Quito. I wrote a blog post about that down below, but it's something to be aware of.
Just speak to your healthcare professional and they'll tell you whether or not it's a risk and whether it's something you should get. Airbnbs or hotels?
We used trusted house sitters through America and Canada, and it was amazing, but they are few and far between here in South America. We've got an alert on our phone waiting for them to pop up, but it's never fit us so far. So we are back to using our normal hotel booking engine and Airbnb. We have found in Ecuador, predominantly Airbnb seems to be the way to go. We're getting better places for less money, and it's allowing us to cook our own food, which saves us more money in the long run too.
We've also discovered somewhat of an Airbnb hack in that if you maybe stay and you need to extend and you have the host's number, sometimes maybe it works out to be a bit cheaper to just do it between yourselves and take out the third party.
Yeah.
We went back to a couple of places because we were in and out of Quito so much, and we just messaged them. To say it worked out cheaper might be a bit of an understatement.
Yeah. Okay, those are our 10 tips for Ecuador. Let's get into the itinerary that we actually did.
Don't do our itinerary because we did not plan our time in Ecuador well. We were in and out of Quito. I think we were there 5 separate times, right?
Yeah, roughly.
4 or 5. So don't follow the exact itinerary, but go to the same places.
We started in Quito. Quito is the capital city of Ecuador and is incredibly massive. It was a lot bigger than we thought it was going to be and takes you a long time to get from north to south. Despite being a pretty modern city, there are hundreds of colonial buildings lining the streets in the Centro district.
There's markets on the weekends, impressive churches you can check out, delicious restaurants, like street eats all the way up to 5-star luxury restaurants. You could get whatever you wanted in Quito.
You'll find people in the city of Quito to be really nice to each other and to tourists as well, but do be on your guard because again, we have heard horror stories of pickpockets and backpacks being opened behind you.
That was the one place we were walking around through the market and Jordan just had this feeling because he had his backpack on. There was these 2 women sort of crisscrossing behind him and maybe getting a little closer than is necessary. So we just pulled over to the side and they kept walking, but who knows, they were probably trying to open his bag to see what goodies they could pull out.
Every time I turned around, it was like that Michael Cera gif where he's like... And the locals actually carry their backpack on the front too. And I think if you see a country where locals are doing that, you know that you should be on your guard.
Yeah.
The amount of nights we spent in Quito is a lot more than anyone really needs to, unless you live there. We spent 23 nights. Like Emily said, we were crisscrossing back and forth, and Quito was like our hub for most of our time in Ecuador.
We also kept just being like, oh, let's just spend a week there and catch up on some work. So it really added up quickly. Definitely not necessary. I'd say 2 or 3 days, you'd be able to easily do everything in Quito.
The average price we spent per night was $36.56 Australian. That was across 3 separate Airbnbs and 1 booking.com. So 4 different hotels, that's the average.
And boy, do we have some good recommendations in the maps. There is one Airbnb that we didn't stay at until the very end that was just the pinnacle, the top of the top, the best of all of them before. Yeah. So try and stay there.
Yeah. The average amount we spent on food per day in the city of Quito was $20.91. Remember, that does include some zero spend days because we were staying in Airbnbs for an extended period of time, so we could get food and cook. But still, it's really an affordable city.
We got into Quito after a kind of scary border crossing from Colombia. It was an easy process. We just had a scary moment. The bus took about 5 hours from the border town of Tolcan, I think it's called. I actually got incredibly sick on that bus. Very motion sick. Jordan, it was one of the best buses he's ever taken. So
really nice sights. It's a good bus.
That bus cost us about $10 each, I think it was. Not bad.
Of course, you can fly into Quito. A lot of people do fly into Quito. There is a public bus that connects the Quito airport straight into the city center. Like we mentioned, Quito is massive. If you're thinking about where to stay, I would say narrow your vision down to the Centro Historica district because that's going to be where all the markets and all the things are actually happening. But there are gorgeous neighborhood hubs in the north, in the south, like out into the east. They're all over the place and they're all quite good. But for your first time, just look central. Quito has a whole host of things to do. There's heaps of churches, like we said, markets to explore. They've got a cable car, if it's working, that'll take you up to a really nice viewpoint. But honestly, just walking through the Central Historic District was the best part. The music, the people, the buildings, the food. It's great.
There are as well the free walking tours that we always recommend you jump on one of the first days you're in a new country. Or I'm pretty sure they also have hop-on, hop-off buses. If you can't be bothered walking around.
And night tours, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Night tours to go see the lights, all the buildings lit up. And of course, from Quito, you can get to the center of the earth, which is The equator, where you can go on one side and water will flush one way, and on the other side it will flush the other way, like eggs balance. We didn't go there, but it's right in Quito.
We've heard it's amazing, but we also heard like there's some disappointing bits. We just never got there. We kept finding excuses, which kind of meant we weren't that keen.
After Quito, we went to the cloud forest of Mindo.
Mindo sits northwest of Quito. I think it was like a 2 or 3 hour bus ride away, and it is beautiful. You definitely have to add it to your itinerary when you go to Ecuador.
We spent 3 nights there. You probably need 2 to 3 nights. Like, it is a small town, but the things that you can do there do take a little bit of time. So if you want to do everything, you probably need 3 nights.
We did meet some people that literally caught the bus in the morning, had a day there, and then caught the bus back at night. I think it's better if you can at least spend 1 night there, just because the bird watching in Mindo is meant to be the best, some of the best in Ecuador, and that's best done early in the morning. You're never going to get there early enough on a bus. Mindo is more on the expensive side for Ecuador, so everything cost a little bit more, meaning that our accommodation averaged out to $52 per night.
And the food cost was a little bit more too. Admittedly, we did eat out more, or like we only ate out, but it cost us around $32 per day to feed us both. Getting to Mindo is super simple from Quito. There is a bus terminal in the north called Terminal La Afilia. If you can get there, there is a sign that says Mindo and an office that you can go in and buy tickets. Again, I wrote a blog post about that because there wasn't heaps of information online, and I'll link that in the description too, and it will be on the maps as well.
There's plenty of choice in Mindo for where to stay, ranging from cute hostels all the way up to luxury, unique accommodations. We found somewhere sort of in the middle. It was pretty nice. It was very noisy in a weird way. So like where we were was silent, the outside and stuff, but the rooms, you could hear everything someone was doing next door.
It was a little bit further out from the main town of Mindo. It cost $2 in a taxi to get out there, but it was walkable too. I don't think there's many hotels that aren't physically walkable, so don't be afraid to look around.
In Mindo, there's no Ubers, but it seems like the taxis almost charge based on like a distance that goes in a circle radiating out. So it's like $1 to get somewhere within town, $2 was to get to our accommodation. If you're going further, it gets up to 4, 8, so on and so on.
Our accommodation was like a 5 to 7 minute drive away, and it was $2, so nice and easy. Like we said, there is so much to do in Mindo. If you have time and you're spending it there, you can fill it. First thing I would recommend to do, and the first thing you'll see on any blog post, is doing a waterfall hike. This is a pretty cool thing to do because you have an option of doing a short, medium, long, or any length that you'd like.
And to get there, you can either catch a taxi, kind of boring, or you can get a very scary 45-ish second cable car across, or you can get like a 20-minute scenic chairlift. Be aware that the chairlift might be shut for some reason. It was when we were there.
And they just said, we're not opening today.
We just texted the number that was on their thing, and they were like, yeah, we're shut today. Okay.
As well as that, there are massive butterfly gardens. There's actually 2 in Mindo. There's a hummingbird sanctuary that you can check out as well.
You have to check out the hummingbird sanctuary, and you have to go to the chocolate thing as well. That was one of the best things we did. And bird watching is extremely popular in Mindo. If you're into that and you're a bit of a bird nerd, I would recommend booking onto a tour. They are quite expensive, so if like us, you're new on your bird nerd journey, just go on the hike at the Yellow House. They were amazing, and we saw enough birds to please us.
Only other thing we'd recommend is to try this pizza that we've got on the map too. The food in Mindo can be a little bit more pricey. We ended up paying $23 for one pizza at one point, which in Ecuador is very, very expensive. It was a nice pizza, but $23.
Not that nice.
Not that nice.
Our next adventure was the Quilotoa Loop, which if you have the time and you're into hiking, we would highly, highly, highly recommend. Like, I couldn't recommend it high enough. I would go back and do it tomorrow.
Honestly, even if you don't like hiking, it's not super challenging. It is challenging. It's not super challenging, but the views are worth it. It's really, really good to do. It's effectively an ad hoc hiking trail that winds and zigzag up the Quilotoa mountain to get to the Quilotoa crater.
After 3 days, we finally made it to the summit,
which is like a live volcano.
It's a multi-day self-guided hike that normally takes about 3 days. You could do it in 4 or 5 if you want. Some people apparently do it in 1 or 2, which is crazy. But the really good thing is every single day you hike from one town and one hotel all the way to your next hot shower, your next comfy bed, your next delicious dinner.
Yeah, and the beds are so comfy because you're so tired after hiking 6 or 7 hours. We filmed each of our days on the Quilotoa Loop, so they are available to watch and I wrote a blog post about it too, so there's a lot of information. It took us 4 nights to do the Quilotoa Loop because we did stay in Quilotoa when we reached the summit, and we recommend you do that too. I couldn't imagine moving straight on after hiking.
And also waking up that following morning after you'd finished the hike to go check out the crater in the morning for sunrise was quite special, whereas all the people that caught the bus back missed out on that opportunity.
Average price per night was $53.74. That includes both of us staying in each hostel each night and dinner and breakfast for each stay. You don't even have to lug much food up the mountain with you because you get that all included when you stay.
I'd say you'd need a couple of snacks for day one, and then you're probably golden because each of the hostels also offer a packed lunch that you can buy for the following day. So you'd wake up in the morning, have your included breakfast, pick up your little lunch, and off you go. You start walking to the next one.
It's a really good system. Our average food cost per day over the Quilotoa Loop was $20.25, and that's because I included all our pre-bought stuff. So all our supplies, we bought like Band-Aids and a bunch of different Powerades, and everything we brought with us averaged out to $20.25 per day. The hike actually begins in a town called Sigchos, which is about 3 hours south of Quito. But if you want to make the most of it, stay in a nearby town called Latacunga the night before. That'll let you properly prepare, and is also home to a lot of the hotels that'll store your bags while you hike up the mountain. So you only have your backpack, you don't have wheelie bags or big rucksacks. To get to Latacunga from Quito, you have to go to the South Bus Terminal. This is where it gets confusing, but the South Bus Terminal is called Cuetambe, and it's the big one. So getting to most places in Ecuador will be from that South Terminal. We won't spoil any more of the hike. If you do want to see more about it, we've made all those videos like we said, or you can read that blog post too.
After completing the hike, we went to a tiny town called Banos, which was surprisingly one of the favorite towns we went to in Ecuador. We didn't really film much there because we were exhausted after doing the Quilotoa trek, but it was incredible. We were also there on a weekend, so it was very, very busy.
It is a tiny town surrounded by lush mountains and waterfalls you can see from pretty much anywhere. It's also been quite built up as like a westerny sort of town.
It also has a bunch of natural mineral hot springs that we didn't check out just because we're not huge public hot spring people, but apparently that is the thing to do there if you're not checking out a waterfall.
We spent 2 nights. I think 2 nights is probably the right amount, 2 to 4 nights, depending how serious you want to be about trekking to the waterfalls and doing the baths and things. And the average price per night was $28.
Average food was a little bit more on the expensive side. We spent $45 each day on average, but that did include this amazing, expensive Indian dinner that we had. Oh, it was just the best Indian food we've had since literally India. It was incredible.
And for breakfast, we ate like an American cafe, and we had burgers for lunch. Like, we were eating out all the time.
Yeah.
Getting to Banos is pretty easy from Quito, which is obviously our main frame of reference, is a 4-hour bus. We finished our Quilotoa Loop hike in Latacunga and ended up taking a bus to Banos, which meant we had to transfer through a town called Ambato. It was a little bit complex, but we got there without any issues.
Some of the other cool things to do in Banos is you can do a bike ride. I can't remember what it's called, but essentially you bike along the highway to all of the different waterfalls. We were very tempted to do this. If we weren't so tired, I think we would have gone through with it. I think I'm happy we didn't though, because it looks like you're on the highway next to all the buses for a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe look into it.
I agree. There's also heaps of zip lines and like adventure things to do there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like one of the adventure capitals of Ecuador as well. So anything exciting you want to do, you can probably be found in this tiny town.
Speaking of exciting, the next place we went was the Amazon, which was like a bucket list child dream destination for both of us and was insane.
Whatever you think the Amazon would possibly be and whatever high expectations you have, it's better. It's better. It's better.
Obviously, the Amazon is monstrous. It's a behemoth of a forest. It's bigger than the 2 second largest rainforests put together. And we were specifically in a region called Yasuni National Park, which is meant to be the most biodiverse region in all of Ecuador. We felt so lucky to be there. We had a package with a lodge called Sani Lodge. We were there for 5 nights and we got to experience a lot.
Delicious food, some interesting food. Eating bugs in the Amazon. We got to meet and like be healed by a shaman, which is still one of the things that we talk about constantly. Just the kayaking and seeing all of that amazing animals, like you just, I don't know, you just know you're gonna going to see monkeys and caimans and all these exciting things, but actually seeing them in real life, it never gets old. No matter if it's the 20th monkey you've seen that day, you're still just as excited.
The Amazon is one of the more expensive places to go. Our Sunny Lodge adventure was $450 per day for both of us for an all-inclusive package. So you get your transport in from a town called Coca, you get all your food, all your meals, and all your transport in between the different activities, plus a local guide and accommodation. We ended up helping the Sunny Lodge with some of their marketing in exchange for our stay, and ended up making a super long video. It's the longest one we've ever done. So if you sit through it, thank you.
I just didn't want to cut any of the clips. All of the animals were too cute. I just wanted to remember every single moment from every single day because it's the trip of a lifetime for me.
It was amazing.
It was amazing. Getting to the Amazon and Coca, where you'll get picked up for your trip, there's a few different options. I think most people will fly because it's 35 minutes, but again, we are quite last minute and we have big wheelie bags, so we ended up catching a bus, which is meant to take 7 hours, I think, and ours took 9.
There was a bridge that was collapsed, so it took us a bit longer than we thought it would, but we got there. No matter which lodge you choose, a lot of them pick up from El Coca, that town that sits on the river.
And if you want to get the bus like us, you just go to Catumbe, which is the southern Quito bus station, and you'll be able to get the bus from there.
Leaves about 5 times a day.
I know we worked with them, so we might be a little biased, but I would recommend Sunny Lodge 1,000 times. I would pay for that experience time and time again. It's community run, which isn't very common in the area. There's a couple of private lodges in the area, but the fact that it's community run just gives it this different energy and experience. We actually met someone on our trip that had been fortunate enough to stay at a few of the other ones, and he said that the community run ones do just have this special thing that just can't be replicated.
And Sunny Lodge is like deep in the jungle. Like, it's one of those places where it is fully surrounded. You cannot get out there without catching a boat. It's so deep in the jungle, whereas other ones are pretty close to civilization, which is less of the experience I would have wanted.
After our 5th time in Quito, we made our way to our final stop in Ecuador of Cuenca.
Cuenca is one of the oldest cities in Ecuador and was actually settled before the Incans. Before the Incans even got there, the locals were settled there already. Now the city represents a really large expat population. There's a bunch of Americans and English and Australian people that kind of call that home now. Because of that, there are massive supermarkets. It's the first place we found in Ecuador where we could go into a supermarket and kind of know where we're going, and they have everything.
Like we said at the start, there is no Uber, strangely enough, but taxis were cheap and often metered.
It is also a lot easier to communicate in Cuenca because there are so many expats there. English is a lot more available. Not something you can rely on still, definitely not, but it is more common.
We spent an entire week in Cuenca just because we needed to catch up on some work after being disconnected in the Amazon for so long. I would say maybe 2 days would be enough though.
It is a beautiful city to see. If you get an apartment that's within walking distance, which you probably should or could, it'll cost you about 48 Australian dollars per night. Ours was really nice, did the trick, had its own kitchen, and meant that we could cook a lot of our food again. So food was only costing us $23.42 per day, and we went on a food tour in Cuenca. So it's pretty good.
Not bad.
The airport in Cuenca is pretty centrally located as well. You'll see the planes drop really, really low, and it's connected to the main city with a tram.
But if you're like us and you catch the bus instead of getting flight, again from Quito you head to Catumbe station, and I think it was an overnight bus.
No, we did a
Full day
bus, that one.
Full day bus.
There are overnight buses you can get, but we caught, I think, a 9 a.m. and we got in at 7 p.m. It was a 10-hour bus. No matter where you are in Ecuador, it's pretty easy to get there because Cuenca is kind of like the southern hub, so you shouldn't have any trouble finding a bus. Being that Cuenca is so old, there are ruins everywhere. It's the kind of place where you walk around, you don't even realize that there's a ruin next to you.
We saw 2 different ones within walking distance of town, maybe like a half-hour walk away. The first one was really cool, but you couldn't go in. They were like blocked off. The second one was at the museum, which we sort of had mixed feelings about by the end, just because there were birds there that we didn't think maybe looked very healthy.
We still don't really know, but it didn't look comfortable for them, and their cages were really small, so.
Other cool things to do is to check out the sort of central park area. There is this ginormous cathedral that you can actually climb up the top of, and it just has these beautiful blue domed roofs. It's very unique. But if you're there, when you exit the church, turn left, and then turn left again when you enter like a little courtyard and go have something to eat at the restaurant with this amazing view. You won't be sorry. It's quite expensive, but it's beautiful.
Get the potato soup.
Yes.
When we finished in Cuenca, our time in Ecuador was over, which means we missed a lot of the coast. We missed heaps of Ecuador.
If you have any recommendations, put them in the comments below, because this is definitely a country we would love to come back to one day, and it will help everyone else that's watching this video to make sure they get the most out of visiting Ecuador as well. Obviously, we missed out on one of the big things to do in Ecuador as well, and that is the Galapagos Islands. It just didn't unfortunately work out for us this time. It was too expensive. It's one of those things that we'll dream about forever, and hopefully we can come back and do one day. But the fact that we got to go to the Amazon is pretty special.
I think that having the Galapagos left undone is the reason why we will be back. Obviously, through our time in Ecuador, we were documenting everything we did, like we said at the beginning, and everywhere we ate, and putting it into a Google map. So if you are interested in seeing that and get some advice and ideas of where to go, we'll link that in the description below.
You can zoom in, you can check out all the cool spots.
I think I'm lame.
I know this is a bit different to our usual videos, but we just feel like we learn all of this stuff about a country, and generally speaking, that's just been cast to the side. So we thought, why not take that information and give it to some people and hopefully make it a bit easier for them to plan their trip, or maybe convince them to go to a country that they were just on the edge of maybe visiting. And now to help the YouTube algorithm, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, because it really helps a small channel like ours grow. I hate that, we've never said that before.
Toothpaste for a moment.
No, do I? No. Yes.
Welcome to the ultimate Colombian is not where we were.
Spanish speakers, but we'll... Bato, 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 bato.
Is that right? Ultimate Ecuador travel there.
Yeah. Been a while. It's been a while. Imagine if the microphone wasn't working.
That'd be so funny. Please be working.